Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Saylor, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to present testimony in support of my legislation implementing the recommendations of the Basic Education Funding Commission report issued in June of 2015. The bipartisan Basic Education Funding Commission unanimously issued its commission report with 6 recommendations. The first recommendation is school consolidation. In the next weeks, I will be circulating a co-sponsorship memo which will incorporate the Commission's recommendation for school consolidation. The second recommendation addresses the elimination of the hold harmless provision in basic education funding. Interestingly, the report states the Commission recognizes eliminating the hold harmless clause would have significant negative impact. The report further states eliminating the hold harmless clause would result in 320 school districts receiving approximately $1 billion less in basic education funding than the previous year. The Commission report lists 3 options to eliminate the hold harmless clause. Yesterday, the House passed HB 1552, which codifies option 1, which is the report's recommended basic education funding formula applied only to new money above the base year. That bill also provides 2 special allocations to 2 school districts versus special allocations to all 180 underfunded districts in the Commission report. Without passage of my legislation, a large portion of the 180 underfunded school districts will remain underfunded for 25 years or more. Options numbers 2 and 3 in dealing with hold harmless talk about using set percentages, applying the formula to all money, and distributing on a pro rata basis or proportional basis. This is exactly what my legislation does. My legislation applies the formula to all basic education funding to determine which districts are underfunded compared to the prior year's allocation. Then, it distributes 75% of all new BEF allocations above the base year to the annually identified underfunded districts proportionately. The remaining 25% of the new BEF allocations will be distributed to all districts using the new formula. This ensures that all districts get some new money, while the harmed districts get more money to help them catch up after years of being shortchanged. 4 additional recommendations were made in the report regarding school crossing guards, homeless and foster care student information, trauma, and transiency. Over the next week, I will be circulating co-sponsorship memoranda for each of these initiatives as well. I hope all my fellow members will carefully consider supporting all of these recommendations as they get circulated in co-sponsorship memorandums and in committee votes and House votes. Let me quickly amplify several important points. Without equity first allocations as described in my legislation, school districts will remain underfunded for another 25 years. If my legislation were enacted in last year's budget, Erie School District would have received a $5.7 million increase in basic ed versus a $2.8 million increase in basic ed funding. Instead, Erie School District recently announced it's considering closing 4 high schools. Wilkes-Barre School District would have received $3.9 million increase versus $1.4 million increase in basic education funding. Instead, Wilkes-Barre School District announced it is closing 2 high schools, cutting programs and teachers, and raising property taxes. Stroudsburg Area School District would have received nearly $1 million in basic ed increase versus $500,000. Instead, Stroudsburg recently announced 21 teacher demotions and pre-approved a 3% property tax increase. As you can see by these examples, money is directed to those districts and communities most underfunded and will expedite the transition to equity and fairness. Since its adoption in 1991, the Hold Harmless Clause has purposely underfunded school districts, a full 25 years of punishing public policy. The Hold Harmless Clause and its resulting underfunding of school districts has directly caused massive reductions in real estate property values, significant job losses, unemployment, and the highest mortgage foreclosure rates in the United States. It's hard to imagine the equivalent of $1 billion of annual underfunding openly took place these past years, negatively impacting nearly 1 million students by a majority vote of the House, Senate, and Governor's signature. It's even harder to imagine that now, today, with the unanimously recommended bipartisan Basic Education Funding Commission report documenting 180 school districts underfunded by almost $1 billion, that the General Assembly and Governor would not consider annual special allocations to make these underfunded districts whole. It's time to remedy 25 years of rotten public policy and pay special basic education allocations to the underfunded school districts in Pennsylvania. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.